Alright guys, so I want to talk a bit about 4-HOMET today. It's also known as 4-ACOMET, 4-ACOMET. They're kind of the same thing. Sorry, I'm a bit out of breath by the way, doing pull-ups. They're kind of the same thing. 4-ACOMET, I think it's just like a slightly altered version of the chemical compound, so when you take it, it becomes 4-HOMET in your system, more or less. The experience is identical. I guess the best way to describe 4-HOMET succinctly would be it's like acid, but with a lot of the sort of dark depths of it removed. So in a sense, it kind of removes most of the possibility of having a bad trip, but it also maybe removes some of what's interesting about acid. So I'd say it's a really good option if you just want a fun, easygoing trip where you're not going to be disturbed, you're not going to have some kind of spiral into like, you know, your past or who you are as a person. You will, I mean, it definitely has those qualities, like definitely, but I've had a lot of kind of psychotic acid trips over the years, and I've never had that with 4-HOMET. I've had a lot of anxiety on it, the kind of anxiety you get on an acid trip that usually I find later on turns into a positive feeling, or teaches you something, but I've not ever completely lost sense of who I am and what's going on and gone completely out of control on it. That's never happened. It's never been that weird. It's been kind of like it's almost closer to being high, you know, like on weed. It's never been extreme. The visuals are just as good. Colours are still really enhanced. That's the thing I've noticed the most on it, is like if you're in a nice, colourful setting, it will look amazing. One of my first memories of taking it, me and my girlfriend, ex-girlfriend, we used to go to this casino all the time in Bristol. It's called the Rainbow Casino in Bristol. And this was like my favourite place in the world. They used to do all these promotions. They did like crazy promotions, and we would use all the promotions and then just not really spend any money. They used to give loads of free bets. They'd have these events. Like they had this amazing Mexican night there, and they had all these piñatas, and you'd smash them open and you get all these bet tokens for like a £20 bet and like £5 matched bet, and like all these, like so much. We got hundreds of pounds worth of free bets from there. And they used to have a buffet, right? Like on Thursday nights, but I think the buffet started at like midnight or something, so it's for crazy people, you know, basically crazy gambling addicts who don't sleep. So we only did the buffet once because realistically it's a bit inconvenient to go to an Indian buffet at like midnight, you know. But this was one of those nights. We took 4-HOMET. This was the time we went to the buffet. We took 4-HOMET. We went to the casino, and the whole walk through Bristol, it was like being in Blade Runner. It was amazing. Like everything looked, and you know, Bristol's like whatever. Like it's nice enough. You know, it's not like an ugly city, but it's not super, you know, beautiful or anything. And it looked incredible. I remember just walking around thinking like, this is the coolest place ever. This is so incredible. And it didn't feel like, you know, I was tripping. It just felt like it actually looked that good. And the casino looked amazing inside, and we didn't feel anxious being in there the way that we would have done on acid. It would have been really weird to be at the casino, you know. But we just had loads of fun, and we had some free bets. We played some roulette, had this curry buffet. Didn't really want much because we were tripping. It was just kind of a novelty to have curry buffet. Man, that was such a good night. Yeah, and had a lot of fun, you know. Like, I would say it's not as funny as acid, in my experience. All the trip reports I read of it, people said it was really hilarious. Like, they had a really funny time on it. We never really had that. I don't remember anything particularly funny happening when we were on it. Acid, definitely. Like, we had some hilarious acid trips where really, really funny stuff happened. 4-HOMET, not so much. But yeah, it used to be fun, like to like play games and stuff on it. Yeah, the only thing I had twice, I had this, and I read this online. In fact, no, this only happened to me once, but I read this online that this happened to somebody else as well, which is really weird, really, really weird and hard to understand. randomly, towards the end of the trip, one time, I was sitting on the sofa, and like, kind of like, you know, it was fading. The trip was fading, and then suddenly, my ear just like started. It was in a very short space of time, but I'm explaining it. Like, started this quiet fizzing sound, and then it just kind of went, just like through my ear. It was crazy, but like right in my ear. I felt it like, and like it was so. I was like screamed. Like I like grabbed my ear. You know, it was like really intense. It was like, it was crazy, and it felt super invasive. It was like kind of disgusting because it was just. It wasn't an auditory hallucination. It was like serious noise inside my ear, and I didn't know what was causing it or why it was happening. So, but I mean, like I say, it lasted 2 seconds, not even 1 second, literally, like, and it was so crazy. And after that whole night, I was like, oh, you know, I was really disturbed. And I kept thinking, is this going to just keep happening to me? Like, is this permanent, or what? You know, what was it? Because it's an unusual effect for a drug to have, and it was weird that somebody else had the same experience. Never had it since. I don't know. Strange. Disconcerting. It made me a bit put off, but not really. Yeah. It's also very difficult to dose. You would need, in theory, I'm not encouraging anybody takes this. I don't know what the rules are on that. You would hypothetically need scales with 2 decimal points, 0.00, because you need to weigh very precise doses, and you have to be careful because a lot of these scales, they say they're accurate and they're not. And I think with stuff like this, it's so easy to have too much, because it's such a small, you know, we're not talking a quarter of a gram or a tenth of a gram. This is like less than that. I think a dose is like 0.025 is a dose. So imagine take 0.1 of a gram, which is like less than a standard MDMA dose, and it's a quarter of that. So it's less. It's about a fifth, less than a fifth of a standard powdered MDMA dose. So you're dealing with a tiny, tiny, tiny thing here, and an extra 0.05 or 0.005 or whatever can make a huge difference. So yeah, you have to be very precise. The best way to do it is to use what's called volumetric dosing, which is where you get a larger amount. For example, 0.1, 100 mg, I think. I don't know the difference between micrograms and milligrams, but you know, look this up further should you hypothetically decide to do this yourself. And you take like, for example, 0.1, and so I'm still out of breath. I don't know why. You put that in water and you let it dissolve. You stir it. I don't know if you even need to stir it, but you just leave it for quite a while. I think like more than 10 minutes. Let it completely dissolve, and then you measure the water exactly into 4 doses. And because it's completely dissolved evenly into the water, maybe you do have to stir it, I'm not sure. Then you will have 4 even doses, so you would know that they're each 0.025, assuming you have a scale that, for example, doesn't have decimal points. Even so, I still think it's safer. So when I do it, I weigh 0.05, and I split that into 2, and I just leave 1 in the fridge. It only lasts, I'd say, about 2 weeks in the fridge, which is around, I mean, the tolerance takes about 2 weeks to reset, so you can make 2 doses and do it again, you know, after 2 weeks. I've done it on my own a couple of times, and it's pretty good. Yeah, it's good. It's like just quite thoughtful and, you know, interesting. I did it, last time I did it, it was just after Norm Macdonald had died, and I was listening to a lot of music, walking around on it, kind of pacing all over the place, and I was listening to Injury Reserve's latest album, really amazing. And that one of their members died, like, you know, just at the beginning of making that album, and the album is kind of like somewhat like about his death, and Norm Macdonald had just died. And I was just thinking, it wasn't like, well, I guess what I mean is it wasn't a super fun trip by myself, but it was really good. Like I was thinking a lot about death, and I guess I contemplated Norm Macdonald's death in a way that I wouldn't have been able to sober, I think, or at least I wouldn't have, spent the time doing. And it was very like heartbreaking, really, like not just his death, but just everyone's death, like everyone you love, and yourself and everything. Like when you really stop to think about that, it's like, fairly like, it's hard for me to even describe, but obviously, like, I'm sure you've had that experience, especially if you've tripped or anything before. Like, it's quite hard to process and comprehend. But I think it's important to do so once in a while, and it kind of forces you to reassess your values and what you're doing in life, and what you want to leave behind, and what you want to do while you're still alive. So it was really good, and then after that, it was fun, like I came home and I was just like pissing around and making music and watching a lot of Norm stuff, and I was watching him at Bob Saget's roast, and that is actually a time when For Hermet was really funny. Like that really fucking made me laugh, and I remember I showed it to my ex a few days later, and like she wasn't that amused by it. But like when I watched it on For Hermet, it was like the funniest thing I'd ever seen. It is absolutely hilarious, that roast. Like he does like deliberately really old fashioned kind of non-edgy jokes, like that are completely just like, it's like really subversive, and he kind of like bombs on purpose, and no one understands what's going on. And it was just so fucking like, I don't know, just so like he just didn't care what anybody thought. He just wanted to be funny, and I think he's like the fucking best ever. And that was a really good session. This video, wasn't meant to be a video about Norm Macdonald, it's about For Hermet. So I would say in my experience and from everything I've read, within normal dose ranges, it's pretty hard to have a bad trip on. It's probably a good beginner psychedelic. Probably a good psychedelic for, well, I'm not going to say there's a good psychedelic for people who have like mental health issues, especially depending on the severity of it. But at the same time, I think it's pretty fucked up to say if you have any sort of mental health issue, you should never partake in this like potentially like amazing thing that other people do. Some people I don't think should, but I can't fucking speak to every individual. So yeah, in general, people who are set on doing things like this, I would say in theory, it's like probably one of the more easygoing psychedelics where you're less likely to have like a crazy freak out. You might have a weird time, but it's just not as dark and twisted kind of psychologically as acid can get. And I know acid is not like that for everybody, but man, like it was for me a lot of times. And even shrooms, like I've only done them once, and it was like a heavier experience than For Hermet, I would say. I really liked it. I'm going to do them again soon, but it was a heavier experience, I would say. So For Hermet is maybe a bit less deep, but definitely still has a lot of the good qualities of sort of your average psychedelic experience. And that's all really. I was going to say I recommend it, but I don't. Formally, I don't recommend it, and I don't recommend anyone does any drugs. But I liked it. That's all I'll say. One thing I forgot to mention. One time, me and my ex did For Hermet with 5-MAPB, which is like a kind of euphoric, like a kind of milder version of MDMA. Perhaps 5-MAPB is to MDMA what For Hermet is to acid, so it was a kind of like a milder version of candy flipping, 5-MAPB and For Hermet, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. The 5-MAPB greatly enhanced the For Hermet and enhanced the visuals, but it also gave it like a euphoric kind of quality, and it was one of our favourite trips. Like it was really good. Really good combo. And I'll probably do a video about 5-MAPB in future as well. It's also quite an interesting one, quite good.